Thank you for coming back for video 4 in our series on communicating with compassion in dementia care. I'm dementia coach Diane. My husband Ben is living at home with Lewy body dementia. And I found that early on, the most important thing that I could do was to learn how to communicate with Ben in the way that he needed to be communicated with. And it's kind of interesting when you think about communication because it's important in every relationship. But when you're living with someone who's going through cognitive changes, it's every good communication principle you ever heard about is now on steroids. And if you follow some principles, it can make your life and theirs so much easier and less frustrating. So I want to do a quick recap on what we covered in the first 3 videos. And then in this one, we're going to talk about how we can show up differently as caregivers. But just quickly to go over, we want to make sure that we're using our body language and our tone of voice and our facial expressions more so than our words. And the truth is 93% of our message is communicated that way, whether someone's living with cognitive changes or not. So we don't realize how much the words don't really matter. So that's good news. We want to show our loved ones what we want or what we're trying to help them to do versus saying it. And I mean, I do both, but I keep my words very simple and I focus much more on showing Ben what to do. I also do my best to enter his reality instead of continually forcing him to come into mine. So if whatever he's thinking is true, that's the way I go. And it does take some creativity, it takes willingness, but once again, it actually makes life so much easier for both of you. Instead of trying to correct your loved one, that you actually just go with their flow. The other thing, and this took me a while to learn, is that we do really want to help preserve their independence and certainly their dignity by showing them what to do, perhaps guiding them through some of the tasks that we used to just take for granted, like personal care, getting dressed, or eating. As we guide them gently and also do the activity ourselves, we can, their brains can mirror what we're doing more so that they can necessarily understand our direction. So the other thing is, if we do want to or need to use words, I found that you're going to need to wait sometimes up to 90 seconds, for the concept to process. If I'm helping Ben to change, I have a changing station all set up and I'll say, hey, honey, let me help you change. And I'll guide him to the room. I'll pat the chair. I'll show the fresh clothes and everything. But sometimes he'll walk around the house for a few minutes. And I've come to just take that time to sit there and deep breathe. It can feel like it's taking forever because our to-do lists are long. I get that. But believe me, slowing down for your loved one helps you as well. And that's what I want to focus on in this particular video, because there's a concept that I actually took from my spiritual studies, which is don't try to change the world, change your mind about the world. And then you often find your outside circumstances, the world, changing. And boy, that has really been true with my experience with Ben. I know that, again, it can be very daunting to be going through this experience, especially because, I certainly wasn't trained as a caregiver or especially not a caregiver for someone with dementia, because, we are all trained to use logic and reason, and it just doesn't work. There are kind of no rules, I found, when it comes to dementia. So as I've been willing to surrender my own agenda, and I continually ask myself questions like, how much does that task matter right now? Or, how important is it that I get Ben to um, see something from my point of view? I've given that agenda up pretty much 100%. And as I said, it can be frustrating because it can feel like, oh, I just have to do everything to please, my spouse or my parent or my sister. And I don't tend to think of it that way. I'm not really trying to please them. And it's not that my needs don't matter as well. It's just that as I've been willing to shift the way I do things for Ben's sake, it actually calms me down as well. And I'm not saying I don't pray a lot. I do. And I pray for patience and kindness and compassion. But in the long run, it's actually helped my inner peace as well. So if we're willing, as I said, to focus on our connection with our loved one versus the task that we're trying to complete or trying to get them to do, it just makes your life a whole lot nicer. Now, let me just go back and share some things that can help. Once again, instead of trying, another rule I'd say in dementia care is to focus on changing the environment versus trying to change your loved ones. So, we've been talking a lot in this series about communicating with them about activities of daily living, which is most of what we're doing, taking care of these bodies. And some simple things can help, like you can get pictures of a given activity, eating, getting in the shower, taking a bath, putting clothes on. I mean, simple things that quite honestly are probably or have been designed for children. Sometimes children's books with very simple graphics can be very helpful. So you can get, pictures of activities or food items that they recognize and just, do, again, some show and tell. They also make charts, where they have step-by-step images that show your loved one, the steps you're going to go through. And if you call the Alzheimer's Association, they can often direct you to some of these kinds of resources. You can label drawers, with socks, underwear, pants, shirts, something that could make all the difference when they walk into the bedroom. If they can still dress themselves, label the drawers or just lay out their clothes in the order in which they need to put them on. And something that simple can really, really help them. Use favorite objects to, spark some engagement. So Ben has very specific cups. He has one that he drinks his water out of and one that he drinks his smoothie out of. And I use the same plates and bowls. And so he knows when it's time to eat his sandwich. I put out the red plate and then we put a sandwich on it and he's ready to go. So if you use some of these tools, over and over again, you guide them, you show them, they can remember. I mean, that's just it. It may be muscle memory, and it's the routine that they start to remember, but that's great, right? It does make things a lot easier in the long run. So I think in general, at least I have found that it really reduces frustration for you and your loved one if you take the time to think about what's going to help them. And instead of trying to get them to do something, guide them into doing it. You're going to have fewer arguments and refusals and a lot less agitation, fewer power struggles, I've found. What we really want to do is promote, cooperation and trust. And really, it's quite amazing that the calmer I am, the calmer Ben is. And even when he's really agitated, we had a full moon recently, and oh my gosh, it really affected him. And he was pretty agitated for like 4 days. So I'm not saying I didn't have to really work at it, but I've learned to use my breath and to use some other self-care techniques like tapping just to help me settle my body down, because I can't afford to be so influenced by his agitation. So I've learned how to stay calm and patient as best I can, even if he is agitated. And it's amazing because he will eventually go with, our flow together. It really helps. And I think the most important thing is that it's really our presence more than our words that our loved ones want and need. They need the connection with us. And I don't know, for me, I need the connection with my guy. He's my husband. I promise to be with him for better or worse. I'm deeply grateful that I've managed to still take care of him at home, but it's because I've had to practice and learn all of these techniques that have helped us to keep a relatively simple, peaceful, and calm environment. So thank you so much for watching this series. I hope it's been helpful. Appreciate the thumbs up if it has been. And even more importantly is for you to share your comments about what's worked for you, because the community knowledge that we're building here is what's going to help the most, I believe. And every situation is going to be a little different, but there are these principles that we can keep going back to, and they will help us through some specific circumstances that will, that sometimes, can throw us in the moment, but the principles work in the long run. So thank you once again. I hope you'll subscribe to our channel. That tells YouTube that you want to see more things like this, and it gives me the encouragement to keep posting. And I just, again, thank you so much for contributing to the community, because truly, together we're stronger. Together, we got this.